Hi everybody, welcome to the Manifold channel. Today we're going to continue our series of videos on learning Manifold System Release 9 in Viewer by introducing Manifold Viewer, which is a wonderful free product from Manifold that is a read-only version of Manifold System Release 9, so it's very powerful. We're looking at the Manifold Viewer homepage here, and you'll see when from this demo and others that it really does let you connect to everything, see everything, and answer questions. If you recall in the prior video, we installed Manifold Viewer using a so-called portable installation. That means we just downloaded a zip file, and when you unzip that zip file, that gives you a folder here which contains the Manifold executable, the Viewer executable. To launch it, just double-click on Manifold exe. And we're working with YouTube here, where we see only part of the screen, so I'm going to resize the Viewer desktop that just opened up, that popped open, and I'm going to fit it into the YouTube video display, which is kind of a limited display. Normally when you're working with visuals, with large maps or large images or stuff like that, you're going to use a full screen display. Certainly if you're doing mapping or GIS or data science or stuff like that, you're probably going to use more than one monitor as well, maybe 2 monitors, even 3 monitors, which gives you a lot of room to move stuff around and to reposition layers and panes and to have a really big desktop. We don't have that luxury when we're doing YouTube videos, so we're going to keep it small here, and we're going to keep panes docked here to the left side of the display, and we're going to work with the right side of the display right here. Let's begin by importing something, and I'm going to import a shapefile. I have here a bunch of folders with shapefiles that I've downloaded. Manifold knows hundreds of different formats, but shapefiles are pretty popular, so we'll use those. And here in the World Volcanoes folder, I have some shapefiles for Alaskan volcanoes and shapefiles for world volcanoes. I can download both of them. I can import both of them at the same time by control-clicking these two, both the two shapefiles there, and click import, and they both import instantly. And what we see here is that each one of them has a table, and the table is the attribute table. That's where the actual information for it in the geometry is stored. And it also has a drawing. If we double-click open the drawing, that shows you how Manifold is taking the geometry information from the table and it's plotting it as points. If the shapefile contained polygons or something like that, it would show polygons as well. It would do all that as well for you as well. If we're looking here at the drawing, we can see it doesn't tell us all that much because there's no context. It's just a bunch of points. And we'd really like to see these in context. So for example, perhaps against a world map. So let's close that drawing. And what I'll do is I'll create a map based on that drawing. And to create a map, I'll choose Create, New Map, to open the New Map dialog, and choose a name for the map. I'll leave it as Map. Choose a base layer, and Manifold will automatically create a data source for you that has any one of these standard image servers, which are web-served maps like Google Maps or Bing Maps or whatever. And I'll choose a Bing Map Street Map for starters. And because we right-clicked on volcanoes, it has that drawing already selected. If I wanted to add the Alaska volcanoes as another layer, I could do that too. I just click on that. Now I'll create map, click Create Map, and that creates a map. And it also creates this Bing Streets Maps data source, which is going to be used as a background layer. I'll double-click Map to open it, and you can see what we've created here. We have 2 different data sets going. I'll turn off Alaska volcanoes, and I'll just leave the main volcanoes drawing here, which are the larger world volcanoes. And a map is a structure that doesn't really contain any data itself. All it does is it contains layers from other sorts of things. So for example, this particular map has 3 layers. It has a background layer, which is the Bing Street Maps layer taken from this data source. It has the volcanoes layer, which is taken from this drawing. And it has the Alaska volcanoes layer, which is taken from that drawing there. You can turn the layer on and off by double-clicking its tab on and off. Or here in the Layers pane, you can just click these little boxes to turn them off and on. There, for example, is the Alaska volcanoes drawing. And there's the volcanoes drawing there. And there's the Bing Street Map layer as well. If you turn off the background layer, which is kind of like a pseudo layer, that's just a background fill, which is convenient to have if nothing else is going on. And we'll turn that on. You can see that provides a white background. You can change the color of that to whatever you want. We will leave it white for now. And we'll leave the Bing Street Maps layer turned on as well. The gray dots there that you see volcanoes may not be all that visible, so let's color those dots. So with the focus, when you click on a tab to choose it, it's saying you're putting the focus on that tab. With the focus on volcanoes, we'll click here on the Style pane, and we'll change the fill color for points to bright green. Manifold layers can have both points, lines, and areas in them. A lot of other GIS products are limited to only points or only lines or only areas. Manifold can have all three objects. So that's why the style pane here has three separate rows: one for areas, one for coloring polylines, and one for coloring points. So we made these points, bright green. We can change the point size if we want to, say 12 points, which is kind of a little big for this size screen. Let's leave it at 6 points. And that's good. And we'll go back here to the layers presentation. And let's turn on the Alaska volcanoes layer. And we can zoom to that layer by right-clicking the Layer tab, and here off screen in the context menu choosing Zoom. So that zooms us to where the Alaska volcanoes layer is. And it's actually zooming it so that Alaska volcanoes here at the end of the Aleutian Islands chain are visible, as well as the ones here. Let's right-click and zoom into the Alaska volcanoes there. And the way we're navigating here, by the way, is I'm using the left mouse button to click and drag, and that's pan. And when I use the right mouse button to click and drag, that's zoom box. That's something you get used to very quickly in Manifold. Right click and drag to zoom, and left click and drag to pan. You can also use the mouse wheel to scroll in. And we're waiting for Bing to refresh. Bing isn't anywhere near as quick as Manifold. You can use the scroll mouse to zoom in and to zoom out. You can also use these buttons up here to zoom in and zoom out, but most Manifold people just use the scroll wheel. This also is a zoom to fit. That'll zoom to fit everything and all the layers that are in the map. So that's kind of cool. Let's quickly change the coloring of the Alaska volcanoes to let's make them bright magenta. And let's make them 8-point size, and let's change the symbology of that to using this square. So there's our Alaska volcanoes. We can double-click those off, and you can see the Alaska volcanoes layer has many more Alaska volcanoes. They're taken from the Alaska Volcanoes Observatory, which has all the different volcanoes there. Now let's say we wanted to take a look at these volcanoes and this map, and we wanted, instead of a background image, we didn't want the street map image. What we'd prefer is a satellite image. So let's create a satellite image layer, and the way we do that is we right-click here and anywhere into the project, or choose File, Create, and choose Create, New Data Source, and we can choose one of our favorites here or choose more. I'll choose one of our favorites. Let's choose Google Maps Satellite. You can add favorites as well. That's really easy to do. That's covered in a different video. And so I'll open that, and now what I can do is I can drag and drop this image into the map, and I've just added another layer to the map. And you can see here in the Layers pane, we can turn these off and on. So that's turning the Google Maps satellite image off and on. And these are satellite image tiles that are coming in from the Google Maps server. And you can see that's a pretty cool view. What's really neat about using image servers in Manifold is that there's so many that you have to choose from, and they just have the spectacular ability to let you, it's kind of like hovering anywhere on the planet. You can see stuff. And there are the volcanoes, and there's the Google satellite image map, and if we turn that off, we'll see the Bing map. So that's that. Now, I promised you that I would show you how to create a really cool illustration, which we can, which you could save despite Viewer being read-only. You can create these incredible projects in Viewer where you can have hundreds of layers, and you can have hundreds and hundreds of components here in the project pane, and combine them in all sorts of different maps, and show them all at once or show them in different combinations, and all the rest of it. And if you had Manifold, which is a mere $95, you could save that as a project, and you could pop that project open instantly later on. What we're creating here in Viewer, because everything that you see here is read-only, when we turn off Viewer, the project goes away. So although it's easy enough to import stuff into Viewer and to look at it and all the rest, and to analyze it with wonderful analytic tools, like I say, that goes away when you close Viewer, because Viewer is read-only. If you want to save the project, you have to pick up Manifold for $95, and that allows you to save the project and adds a few other capabilities as well. Anyway, be that as it may, let's continue this by importing some images. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder in the project pane here, and I'll call that folder Portland Volcanoes. Create folder, and one reason that it's good to have folders in projects is that when you have hundreds and hundreds of things that you've imported that you've linked into a project, it's nice to keep them all organized. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to import some images into that Portland folder, and they're going to come from this folder right here. And I'm going to import all these images. What these images are, these are rasters in so-called GeoTIFF format, and they are terrain elevation data acquired by the Space Shuttle SRTM, and that's the Shuttle Radar Topography mission, I believe it is. So I can highlight them all the way you normally would in Windows and click import, and all four will import at the same time. They open just about instantly. And you can see there, for each one, there's some metadata, which we can double-click open, and that tells you where they came from. And each one has a table that has tiles. That's where the actual image data is. And then there's these images, which represent those. If I double-click open that image, you can see that without it being styled, it's kind of dull. What I want to do is I want to add all these four images into this map here, so they will appear. And because they're georeferenced, they'll appear in the right location. They'll appear actually in near where Portland, Oregon, and all that is. And the quickest way to drag and drop these into the map is I could drag them and drop them one at a time into the map. But a cool way here is I can click the filter button here to show only images. And now I can select these images like that, and I can drag and drop them into the map. And there, we've just added these 1, 2, 3, 4 images. I'm going to drag the volcanoes layer above those. You can see that layer tabs here to the left are above layer tabs to the right. And I'm going to turn this off to show all components. And if we right-click and drag and zoom in here, we can see that these four individual images, which we can tell by what they cover by turning them off and on, are four tiles that cover the terrain here in the region approximately on the border between Portland and Washington. Washington is up here, and Portland and Oregon is down here. Those are the two states. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to combine these four images into one, because styling these four images independently is kind of a hassle, and it's a lot easier if they're all just one image. That's extremely easy to do in Manifold. With the focus on any one of these four images, actually with just to focus anywhere on the map, I can choose Edit, Merge Images, and let's create a name for the merged image. We'll call that SRTM. And if we just merged it right now, it would use the resolution that it's getting from the entire map, which is being generated by Bing and Google. And that would generate a new image that composed of these four images put together. That's pretty darn big. That would have 1 meter resolution, about 222,000 pixels by 320,000 pixels. That's a really big image. It's, a couple hundred gigabytes or something like that. And that's kind of absurd because the Space Shuttle terrain elevation data only has native resolution of about, 30 meters or 90 meters, something like that. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on any one of these three images and choose Use Coordinate System. And there, that's better. It'll create a merged image that has only 7,200 by 7,200 resolution. And the images I want to combine are these four. Manifold is smart enough to know that I'm not going to attempt to combine Google Satellite and Google Bing Maps Street Image into one image with all these either. I just want these four. So those are the four components I want to merge. Let's click Merge Components. And there it's done. It merged those four images that rapidly to create a new one called SRTM. I'm going to remove these from the map. Right-click and choose Delete from Map. Or if I wanted to delete them from the map, I could use the Layers pane, where I could just Control-click them to select them and then delete them from the map like that. And now what I'll do is I'll drag this SRTM image that we've just created, and I'll put it into the map just under the volcanoes layer. And there. Because it's one image, Manifold can kind of guess at how to style it. So it's guessing it there to styling with this sort of a preliminary level of styling. We can see where the Columbia River flows into the basin here, and it meets the Willamette River, approximately where Portland is. Let's style this SRTM image, and we'll use Style. And I'll go through this quickly because this is not a video on how to style images. It's a video on it's an introduction to a viewer. And I'll use channel 0, and I will style that with 12 breaks with, let's use natural breaks, automatically tallies. And you can see here that there's an error in the satellite data here somewhere, the SRTM data here, because it's indicating the lowest terrain elevation here is minus 8,115 meters, and that is just wrong because there is no place in this region which is minus 8,000 meters. That's somewhere in the Marianas Trench. So that's just not right here. So somebody, when they were editing the SRTM data for publication, didn't do it correctly. We can fix that by changing this to 0. And what that'll do is that'll just sort of assign all pixels to whatever color we choose for this interval. Let's choose a palette. I'm going to use Color Brewer. Off screen, I'm choosing the Color Brewer Spectral palette. Click Update Style, and that automatically styles these. I'm going to turn off the volcanoes display because so that's a little bit, those dots are getting in the way. And that's a pretty cool look, but I think I prefer the reverse palette. So let's reverse the palette. Click Apply, Update Style. There, I kind of like that palette effect better. And since these are, after all, volcanoes that we're looking at, I think we need some hill shading, which is easy to do with the Options tab here. I just click the Use Shading button and checkbox. And I know from experience that a Z value of about 0.05 with this data set is going to make it look okay. That provides nice hill shading. You see right away we see hill shading where everything stands out in a nice relief. And the 4 volcanoes are pretty obvious that are in this area. This is Mount St. Helens. This is Mount Adams. This is Mount Hood with the city of Portland right around here somewhere. And this is Mount Rainier up closer towards Seattle. And we can zoom in and take a closer look. Right-click and drag to zoom in. Zoom box. And here's Mount St. Helens. And you can tell it's Mount St. Helens because when the Mount St. Helens blew up a few decades ago, the caldera blew out in this direction, and this is the very large crater that's left, and all the ejecta that blew out of the crater came out that side. So you can see Mount St. Helens there. And if you actually want to know where all these things are, let's create one more data source here, and choose File, Create, New Data Source. And what I'll do is I'll create a custom image server here, and I'll call this G Streets X for transparent. And what I will do is I will create, you can see all these many choices we have here. I'm going to create an image server, and from the many choices of image servers, I will choose the Google Street Map transparent image server, create data source. And what this does is this is a web server from Google that when we drag it and drop it into the map, what it does is it creates layers, labels, and roads, and between them are all transparent pixels. So it doesn't hide what's between them. And there's Mount St. Helens. And if we look at that, we can zoom up here towards, let's work with Mount Rainier, which is a pretty impressive mountain. And I'll kind of right-click and drag to zoom to about there. And if I turn that off for a moment, you can see that Mount Rainier also is a volcano. Here right at the top of Mount Rainier is the crater from the original volcano. And around here there's some traces of old caldera volcano openings as Mount Rainier was building itself as a volcano. And what we'd like to do is, what we have now is we have this styled image, that's the SRTM image. And if I turn that off, you can see what's underneath it. Let's zoom out just a little bit more. And this is a view of Mount Hood in Google Satellite, and there's the Bing Street Map. Excuse me, Mount Rainier in Google Satellite. And you can see that there's this kind of pseudo terrain elevation here that you get from the shading, the shadows in the satellite layer. What I want to do is I want to combine that satellite layer with the SRTM synthetic terrain elevation display to create a synthetic image that has some satellite relief to it. And the way we can do that is in the Layers pane here by changing the opacity of the SRTM layer to 50%, or whatever percent you like. And you can see what that does. That uses the synthetic coloring and synthetic terrain elevation of the SRTM layer. I'll turn that off and on to kind of emphasize. You can see how that's more emphasized here in the shading in the hills and the valleys, which are kind of harder to read in just the satellite photo. And by choosing correct palettes in the SRTM layer, you can choose all kinds of, really create all kinds of dramatic cartographic effects. And let's turn that Google Maps Street Map layer back on. Now what I want to do is I want to save this as a image. And how do you do that if you have only a read-only product? Well, you do that using a screenshot. So I'm going to undock the map, and you can see how we can dock and undock things here. We just I can right-click this and choose Undock, and then right-click that title bar and choose Dock. Or, like many Manifold people do, I can use the shortcut Shift-click to undock, Shift-click to dock. So let's undock that. Great, we've just undocked that. And now what I'm going to do is a print screen. If you want to do a screenshot in Windows, you can just click the print screen button, and that'll do a screenshot of all the, of your entire Windows desktop. Another way of doing a screenshot is that if you want to do just a screenshot of just open a window like this map window here, you can Alt-click it, Alt print screen, and that'll just do the active window. So I just Alt print screened right there. So I've done a screenshot. And next what I will do is I will click open Microsoft Paint. You can use whatever graphics editor you like. Paint's kind of built into Windows, so you can use that. It's people make fun of it, but it's actually not so terrible a graphics editor. Use GIMP or Photoshop if you prefer. And now I can Control-V to paste. And I've just pasted that screenshot. What I want to do is I want to cut out part of this the display to get rid of all this the title bar there. So I'm going to reduce the size of that to less than 100% here using a scroll bar. And okay, let's make it 50%. Anyway, and what I'll do is I'll use the Select tool here to select this region right there. Now choose Crop. I've just cropped that, and I now have a really nice screenshot, which I can save, file save to whatever format I want, PNG or JPEG, whatever it is. And I've created a wonderful illustration here, a kind of custom illustration, which I can use on a web page, or I can use in a document like a report or whatever. Anyway, what we've done here in Viewer is we've used Viewer to do something productive. We have created a custom illustration, and using the many hundreds of different data sources that you can connect to with Viewer, you can read virtually every GIS format known, virtually any image format known. You can use terrain elevation data. You can create synthetic terrains. You can blend terrains. You can use data sources like just hundreds and hundreds of different web sources to create all kinds of stuff. You can connect to databases, and you can do screenshots of all that and make spectacular illustrations, and all that is free. Download Viewer and try this out. There's no strings attached to Viewer. You don't have to register. You don't have to give your email address or anything like that. It's just free software in the old style, where there's no upsell, there's no advertising, there's no request for donations, none of that stuff. It's just it'll run forever, and it'll do wonderful things for you with amazing power and amazing speed, fully parallel, all for free. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye from Manifold Land. Well, that was fun. If you want to see more, visit us at www.manifold.net. As always, Manifold delivers the world's most advanced, highest quality spatial products for GIS and DBMS at a low price that you can afford. Once again, that's manifold.net. See you soon.